GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This right here, episode 123.
Episode 123, my babies.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't adjust your dial. He is back. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD, but that's not the reason you tuned in. You tuned in to hear my co-host, John Cimino at IamJCMoney on Twitter. John, we're talking Buffalo Bills at Chicago Bears. Before I ask you how you're doing, I got to run through the script here. You can hear us on betterlivethandead.com, gearnetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest Better Live Than Dead and Gear Network podcast. John, with that being said, how you doing? How was your Christmas? We haven't talked to you in a few weeks, but you've been a busy man. I know that, but how you doing?
Extremely busy. Finally on the tail end of that. So doing well. Turned 42 like 2 weeks ago. So yes, thank you. Turned 42, got a clean bill of health. So I'm no longer in physical therapy for my ankle, which means return to the ring is imminent. But just extremely busy with the holidays, the normal 9 to 5. And you know, so it's some sacrifices unfortunately had to be made. And that was, you know, me in my podcasting form. I've been unable to do not just this, but the JC Money show. And I mean, I was able to sneak an appearance on All Bets Are Off, I think just before the calendar year end hit everybody. And it's been wild. It's been a wild month, but finally things are tapering a bit with Christmas out of the way. Christmas was wonderful. I hope yours was as well. And Brayton, thanks for covering for me on short notice the past 3 weeks. You do the job much better than I do. And that's the only time I'll admit that.
Well, hey, even though it was great having Brayton on, it always feels like there's a piece of the puzzle missing when it's not me and you chatting here on the podcast. So I think with that being said, before it gets too sappy, we'll jump right into the recap. John, for the 5th game in a row, the Buffalo Bills come out on top. That's right. They've got a 5-game win streak. Did I get that right? I don't even know. I'm just so excited to talk to you and talk about the Buffalo Bills. I full disclosure, when I wrote the podcast, my brain might have been a little scrambled, but it seems like it's a little longer than that. 6 games. There we go. 6 games, John, for the 6th game in a row.
Games. Yeah, I was about to bring it up right now. Yeah, it started with Cleveland and extended with Chicago. Let
me scrape the crap off my own boot here. For the 6th game in a row, the Buffalo Bills come out on top. This time it was a 35-13 victory over the Chicago Bears in what will go in the record books as the coldest regular season road game for the Buffalo Bills since at least 1967. At kickoff, it was 9 degrees Fahrenheit. I remember they said something about the wind chill was like -11 or 12. Buffalo improves to 12-3 on the season. They clinched the AFC East for the 3rd consecutive year. It's the first time that Buffalo has won 3 consecutive division titles since winning the division 4 straight times from 1988 to 1991. John, this has to go down as one of the most modest 35-13 victories ever. When you look at the box score, you presume that Buffalo put the Christmas Eve beat them down on the Bears. But it feels like there was more to it than just that. I mean, the Bills struggled to get their rhythm in the first half. They trailed Chicago 10-6 at the half. But then Buffalo would go on to outscore Chicago 29-3 in the second half. We'll obviously talk about how that all happened here coming up. But just on the surface, you know, when the game was over, I watched the whole game as I always do. But when I saw the score 35-13 pop up on TV, I'm like, you know, I said to my wife, you know, I said, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, wow, the Bills really whooped their ass. And like, yeah, they did. But there was a lot. I feel like there's a lot more to it than that. It didn't feel like the beatdown that it looked like.
Yeah, I get that. I get that optic. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that it all happened and in the second half of the game where you had to sit through a abysmal, cold, nasty looking, nasty played first half where they put up 6 points against the lowly Chicago Bears, the now 3-12 Chicago Bears. I mean, you're looking at I turned off the game in the first half of the game because it was, for lack of better terminology, very boring. And I get it's a sport and there's an element to it, but it just didn't seem like it computed with the Buffalo Bills that this very well could have been a trap game and that they needed to make whatever adjustments they need to make in the half in order to win this game, because it wasn't necessarily a must win, but it was a must win. When you've got Cincinnati and you've got Kansas City, even though you own the tiebreaker on Kansas City, that Cincinnati variable with Joe Burrow and them, they're playing real good football. You got to win out and you got to play, because that number one seed, that very important, elusive number one seed, where you're the only team in your conference getting that week off to rest, that's important. That's something worth playing for. And you kind of need to have your ducks in a row there. And that first half, the Bills did not have that.
And that's something we'll obviously discuss later on in the podcast, because things are developing rapidly in the AFC as well as the NFL as a whole. But John, to jump into our three big things brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your National Hockey League sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, John, running down the offensive stats, I think a lot of the reason the game didn't feel like a beatdown was simply because Josh Allen had a very modest, I use the word modest again, a very mediocre day. He was 15 for 26 passing, had 172 passing yards, 2 touches, 2 interceptions, with 6 rushes for 41 yards and a touchdown. Allen now has 174 career touchdowns, surpassing Dan Marino for 171 for most touchdowns all time in a player's first 5 seasons. But Allen was kind of regressing back to a little bit of a 2019 Josh Allen, making some poor choices on both picks. First off, the first interception looked like he misread the play, ended up throwing to Isaiah McKenzie in double coverage. It almost seemed like he did not see the defender shifting back to help the man covering McKenzie, and then threw it directly into double coverage. The second interception appeared to be an overthrow to Cook over the middle. It just literally looked like he was trying to throw a 70-yard ball 5 yards and just completely overshot James Cook, who was roughly like 4 to 5 yards out. So not great from Josh Allen, but look at, before we even talk about Josh Allen, I want to transition into this very major point here that I'm ready to make. I've been ready to make with you. Mm-hmm. Sunday proved one thing, that this Buffalo Bills team is probably better than last year's Buffalo Bills team. The high-flying defensive juggernaut that was the 2021 Buffalo Bills. This year, the big difference, John, the running game. And we saw that on Saturday. Sorry, we saw that on Saturday. They had 31.
And that was something that I think we'd highlighted quite a bit, not just earlier this year, but last year as well. That if there is even a decent or acceptable running game behind Josh Allen, you don't need Josh Allen to play Madden on rookie level every single week, in order to get the thing. So it's nice to see that this running game is finally starting to kind of pick that up and take some pressure off of the legs of Josh Allen.
And we've got a fun stat later on in the podcast. I won't share it now, but that's what we call a teaser, my friends. The running game, 31 total rushes for 254 yards and 3 touchdowns. The 254 total rushing yards is a season high. It is the highest total rushing yards for Buffalo since they recorded 272 rushing yards versus Miami on Christmas Eve in 2016. Running back Devin Singletary had 12 rushes for 106 yards and 1 touchdown. He had 2 receptions on 3 targets for 19 yards. It's the third career game for Singletary with 100-plus rushing yards, and his 33-yard touchdown run was the second longest of his career, with the longest coming a 46-yard touchdown at Miami on September 19th, 2021. Also, running back James Cook looked very crisp, very good. 11 carries for a career high 99 yards and 1 touchdown. Cook is the first Bills rookie with a touchdown streak since Gabe Davis had a touchdown in 3 consecutive games in 2020. So
now
again,
I think that with when you're just reading off these stats here, I do recall us talking a lot about Devin Singletary in particular, can he be the guy, right? And when you're looking at this stat line here, the Devin Singletary and James Cook stat line, he doesn't really need to be the guy. This by committee thing could actually work out quite well for Buffalo. Save some miles on Josh Allen's legs and keep the train rolling. I mean, you get not one, but 2 running backs that are putting up 100 yards on average a game. That's gonna help quite a bit. Josh Allen doesn't need to pass for 200 yards if you've got 200 being accounted for on the ground from between 2 people. So it's great that they finally got the running game going, because that's going to prove big, especially in these winter months, especially if you're playing out in Buffalo, which for some reason snow doesn't stop falling there.
So looking at this right now, I'm just trying to see. Just looking at the statistics here of seeing how Buffalo's running breaks down in comparison to the rest of the league. Devin Singletary ranks 22nd with 790 yards behind Raheem Mostert, who has 791 rushing yards on 161 carries. So essentially what I'm getting at is, if you look at the yards per average, and you're looking at guys who have run the ball over 100 times, you've got Lamar Jackson at 6.8, Justin Fields at 6.7, Josh Allen at 6.5, but then you're scrolling down the list here, and Devin Singletary's in pretty good company in terms of the amount of rushes he's had and the amount of rushing yards he's amassed, because you look at guys like he's in a class with Deonta Foreman of the Panthers, Kenneth Walker III of the Seahawks, and Derrick Henry has a 4.5 yards per carry, but he's also run the ball 319 times. But Kenneth Walker, 176, Deonta Foreman, 178 rushes, all at 4.6 yards per carry. And Walker has 803 yards and Foreman has 811 yards. Singletary has 790 yards. So again, it's something where you see, I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. I'm just trying to look at the stats and say, hey, if he were to get more opportunities, he probably would have a lot more yards. But here's the thing. It's week 16 and Devin Singletary looks fresh. It's week 16. James Cook looks fresh and looks like an NFL running back. He has developed his game throughout the season to get to this point where you can have those 2 guys instead of rushing Singletary 25 times a game or rushing Cook 25 times a game. You've got Singletary with 12 and Cook with 11. They're staying fresh and they are explosive out of the backfield, which is a very nice thing to see.
Absolutely. I hate to say embarrassment of riches, because it's not necessarily, riches, but in the same, you get that kind of production. I mean, you're going to win football games.
Absolutely. Even with the Bills offensive line being less than stellar this season with injuries and with ineffectiveness, the fact that they're still running their asses off is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Wide receiver Stephon Diggs had another down week. He had 2 receptions on 2 targets for 26 yards, but his 2 receptions on Saturday put him at 101 receptions on the season. He's the 6th player in NFL history to record at least 100 receptions and 1,200 receiving yards in 3 or more consecutive seasons. And he's the first player to ever accomplish this feat in each of his first 3 seasons with a new team. Wide receiver Gabe Davis, 3 receptions on 6 targets for 45 yards and 1 touchdown. The reason we talk about Davis today is he recorded his 7th receiving touchdown of the season. Tying a career high previously set in his rookie year in 2020. Now, moving over to our second of the 3 big things, wrapping up the defense. Not a whole lot to talk about here. Despite the fact that it was only 13 points allowed, there's really not a lot of meat on the bone because they just really did what they needed to do. But Ed Oliver stood out again. He had 4 total tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups. Defensive end AJ Epinesa had 1 tackle, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 quarterback hit. He now has 6.5 sacks on the season, which are a career high and continues to grow. But I know I mentioned that there wasn't a whole lot of meat on the bone defensively, but honestly, they showed up. They showed out on Saturday. They had 11 tackles for loss. They had 5 pass deflections, 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hits. John, they held Chicago quarterback Justin Fields to 7 rushes for 11 yards. Now, mind you, coming into the game, he had 1,000 rushing yards. So he still leads NFL quarterbacks with 1,011 rushing yards, but they held him to 11 yards. That is incredible. They made him play quarterback, ended up holding Chicago to 209 net yards. And the one thing this year that we continue to look at, much like the running backs, we look at third down percentages. On Saturday, they held Chicago to 2 for 12. That's 17% efficiency on third down. So again, everything the Bills struggled at, they succeeded at on Saturday, which definitely helped inflate the win, make it bigger, make it a more I don't know, of a wider victory. Because again, call me crazy, but the Buffalo Bills on Saturday showed that, again, having Josh Allen in the lineup makes your team insanely better. But
yes,
the Buffalo Bills showed that they can win a game when Josh Allen's having an off day, which, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and blame Josh Allen for only throwing 170 whatever yards and 2 interceptions, because
have you ever tried to throw a football in that kind of cold weather, though?
I was just about to say, if it were 9 degrees, when it's 9 degrees outside, oh boy, I'm the biggest bitch. I'm the biggest bitch there ever is. I will complain as the day is long. If anybody's willing to listen, I'm willing to complain. So, I would have to presume decision-making might have been a little compromised because, again, you're freezing your ass off. But we have not really heard too much about that. But, again, I'm not going to hold Josh Allen too accountable because, again, it happens. And he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
He is. And also, I mean, you keep in mind the running game that we talked about and the defense. Like, it's a team game. I feel like I feel like Booger McFarland here. It's a team game, boom, when he's talking at NFL prime time. But it's it's a team game. The defense, as you had mentioned, showed up. They allowed 10 in the first half, which it could happen to anybody. And that running game when it turned up, again, Allen didn't need to carry the team on his back this week. The team carried him. And that's really the nucleus of a very good team.
Big thing, John,
you're not solely relying on just one individual or one entity.
And the one thing I wanted to just jump in and cut you off completely so rudely, I apologize. The one thing I wanted to mention, we knew this last year. It was either Josh Allen winning the game or the defense winning the game. Now we're to the point where this team has developed enough that it's Josh Allen, it's the running game, or it's the defense. It doesn't have to be all three. It can be one, it can be two, it can be all three, but it doesn't have to be. And honestly, on Sunday, the defense did their job and the run game did their job. The defense held down Justin Fields, but I don't know that there was anything Chicago could have done to have stopped the Buffalo Bills running game because they just are scheming so well. And they know they have plays that work so well, and they call them and they're getting, 5, 6, 7 yards a run, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But it's so fascinating to watch because then when Josh Allen is playing well, you run the ball successfully. It's going to push those guys. It's going to bring those guys forward, which in the box, which then allows you, like, that's the best part about this. This is, and I don't know coachees, but essentially what I'm gathering, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but if your run game sucks, they put more people, or they can spread out. They don't have to put people in the box. But if your run game is very solid, you have to bring people in the box, which then opens up the passing game. But knowing that there's Josh Allen passing the ball, you don't want to fill that box up. So now you can run the ball kind of at ease a little more, or with ease, I should say. So it's very, very, very nice to have Josh Allen under center for the Buffalo Bills. The other thing I want to point out, Nyheim Hines continues to get opportunities here and there, is starting to look a lot more comfortable in this offense. I would not be shocked to see his play continue to grow as this season goes on, and into the playoffs. And then you also have Tre'Davious White, a cornerback, who continues to look more and more comfortable with each passing week, which is a scary thing for other teams and an amazing thing for the Buffalo Bills defense, who they've struggled with injury all year. We've talked about that ad nauseum, but Moving on to our third of the three big things, jumping a little deeper into the win. John, no Sunday, no problem for the Buffalo Bills. Their win on Saturday marks the sixth win this season that came on a day other than Sunday. This ties an NFL record with the Boston Patriots, who also had 6 non-Sunday victories in 1962. And they get an opportunity on Monday night, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, to set that NFL record for most wins not on a Sunday in a football season. But talking about running the ball, that's kind of been our big topic, the podcast today. The Bills can run the ball. Their outburst on Saturday of 254 rushing yards on 31 carries, as we mentioned, pushed Buffalo to the NFL lead in yards per attempt at 5.29 yards per rush. This was pointed out by Sal Capaccio of WGR on Twitter. Someone then asks Sal, well, it's got to be Josh Allen, right? That's just the logic. It's got to be the Allen effect. Not so fast.
Corso there.
If you remove Josh Allen's rushing attempts and yards, John, Buffalo still averages 4.81 yards per carry, which would be 5th best in the NFL. So Josh Allen puts you over the top, but they're still
he puts you over the top. And I think that probably because of that is why we don't think of the Buffalo Bills as a running team, because of the Josh Allen variable. But that's a very interesting stat. If you take him out of there, they're still top 5. That's pretty good.
I mean, that definitely will keep some defensive coordinators up at night. And I would have to think with the upcoming opponent that they're going to be facing, the run game is going to be featured a lot, because what's the best way to keep a team off the field? Run the ball successfully.
Absolutely.
A stat we've been following, no interceptions updated. Buffalo had won 5 straight games, John, despite not recording a pick in any of those games. They were set to tie. They were 1 play away from tying the record. Not sure it's a record you want to tie, but they were 1 game away from tying the NFL record set by the Dallas Cowboys for 6 straight games with wins despite not recording a pick. But old pal Nathan Peterman, final play of Saturday's game, he threw a pick as time expired to Buffalo safety Jaquan Johnson, his first pick of the season. John, this was Buffalo's first interception since week 10 versus Minnesota, where Kirk Cousins threw 2 picks. But I love a good Nathan Peterman sighting. And for those keeping track at home, Nathan Peterman now has 13 interceptions in 12 career games played. And I think that circle of life can finally come to a close, because he threw a lot of picks for the Bills. Now he threw a pick to the Bills. We can put that to bed and we can move forward.
I feel like there is perspective in that somewhere. If you're ever down about the team, maybe Josh Allen didn't play like Josh Allen typically plays, right? And you're like, oh man, I really think we might be like, you remember the Nathan Peterman days. That last play. I mean, it couldn't have been more poetic, I think.
Yeah. I said to my wife, because I was like, we didn't need to get an interception here. She's like, isn't the game over? I said, you don't even understand. They got a pick. And I was laughing my ass off. And she said, I just don't get it. And I said, well, Nathan Peterman was the guy that Sean McDermott said was more ready to play than Josh Allen was years ago, and started Nathan Peterman over Josh Allen, and then quickly regretted his decision and then moved on to Josh Allen, which has worked out pretty damn well. But
right. I think I will tell you, when that happened, I yelled out like I did back in the days when he was doing it for Buffalo, Nate Pete.
I think it's funny, first off, that we still stick with that. But every so often, whenever something like Josh Allen does that's historical, I always see that QB1 Nathan Peterman tweet come from the Buffalo Bills onto my timeline. Some of my friends have the greatest sense of humor. So like if Josh Allen wins the MVP this year, which he's right up there, I'll probably see that tweet resurface again, because it's just amazing that's where we started.
I need to see this tweet. I need to put that into my repertoire as well.
I'll find it for you here. But with that being said, John, I'll find it for you on the commercial break. Because we're going to take a quick commercial break here.
Yes, we are.
We're going to be back with our look ahead, which is real quick because we don't have any injury updates yet.
We're wearing our Nathan Peterman jerseys, and we're going to throw the podcast, and it's going to be intercepted by commercials briefly.
I like that. We'll be back right after this quick break, this quick interception, with more Trust the Podcast
I could come up with
here on the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And we're back here on Trust the Podcast. Those commercials were fantastic, and I am finishing up as we speak, John.
Still looking for that tweet?
Oh, no, I got it. I'm just slow to send it to you. It was very easy. I just literally went to Google, typed in Nathan Peterman QB1 tweet. It was the first thing.
Nice.
There's also another one that says September 3rd, 2018. It's official. Nathan Peterman has been named our starting quarterback. I'll make sure to send that one to you as well.
Yes, please.
You can put those in your like you said, the repertoire. Looking ahead here, John, the injury news. It's actually relatively good. The injury news here. Offensive lineman Ryan Bates suffered a knee injury in the game, but did return and did complete the game as far as I know. The bad news, center Mitch Morse missed the game with a concussion. I think it's his 6th or 7th documented concussion. Brayton and I talked about that last week, but you got to think, like, the man has a family. I hope, and for Buffalo's sake, Buffalo's offensive line is much better with Mitch Morse than without Mitch Morse. But for his health sake and for his family's sake, I hope we've seen the last of Mitch Morse, because they're
no joke.
Those close head injuries are a bear.
Absolutely, they are absolutely no joke. As someone that has had several documented myself from my days in pro wrestling, anytime I see concussion, I'm always like more worried about the person than I am about the team.
Absolutely,
and anything like that. So
we're doing the same thing with Miami right now with Tua.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a real bad situation. Like, I feel horrible. Obviously, this is not a Miami Dolphins talk podcast or anything like that. And Dolphins fans, aside from maybe one or two, typically annoy me. But this isn't about team allegiances. This is about the human being and what's happening with Tua. Same thing with Mitch Morse, man. You don't mess around with things like that.
Yeah, especially because offensive linemen get jarred all game long. They get those micro concussions all game long from just getting hit, hands to the face, helmet to helmet, whatever. But you see a guy like Tua, and you know that there were 3 documented instances where he smacked his head off the field. At some point, you just gotta say, man, I gotta do what's best for me and best for number one. But defensive end Boogie Basham missed the game with a calf injury again. No status update on him as well. But John, we turn our focus to the game of the year, the first playoff game the Buffalo Bills will play this season. Week 17, Buffalo Bills at the Cincinnati Bengals, the 2 hottest teams in the National Football League. Monday, January 2nd, 8:30 p.m. on ESPN. Boy, am I lit up for this one already. It's Tuesday night. I had to look at the calendar because I don't know what day it is. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday night, John, and I'm already lit for this game. You've got the 2 longest, I apologize, the 2nd and 3rd longest win streaks, the 2 longest win streaks in the AFC, the 2nd and 3rd longest in the league, because the San Francisco 49ers and the Brock Purdy, they've won 8 straight games. But I digress. The Bills have won 6 straight. The Bengals have won 7 straight. The Bengals are 5-1 at home. The Bills are 6-2 on the road. I mean, it's going to be, to steal a line from AEW's Jim Ross, baby, this is going to be a slobber knocker on Monday Night Football. You've got, again, the 11-4 Cincinnati Bengals versus the 12-3 Buffalo Bills. They both lead their division, the NFC North for the Bengals, the AFC North. I apologize for the Bengals. I clearly don't update my notes here. The AFC East for the Buffalo Bills. John, quarterback Joe Burrow has been red hot as well lately and getting some MVP chatter. He has 4,260 passing yards, 34 touches, and 12 picks. And
extremely cool under pressure, by the way.
He is Joe Cool, modern day Joe Cool. Defense in this
Joe Cool 2K22, man.
Yeah, this in defense will be optional in this game, I think. Buffalo's 4th in the NFL with 420 points scored. Very nice. And Cincinnati is 6th in the league with 391 points scored. But John, the big thing I want to point out here, this is a playoff game for both the Bills and the Bengals. You ask why. I will be more than happy to tell you. If Buffalo wins, the road to the 1 seed in the bye week is clear. They just have to beat New England.
Right.
Because they have tiebreakers over KC and Cincinnati. Plus, if I think Cincinnati loses, they're out of the 1 seed race. But if Buffalo loses, Cincinnati leapfrogs Buffalo, moves to the 2 seed, pushing Buffalo to the 3 seed, presuming that Kansas City beats Denver, which, let's be real, they probably should, but who knows? Because
you would think they should.
You play to win the game or whatever, you know. Plus, I think
Russ is cooking fish in the microwave.
Crystal meth is what it feels like sometimes with how crazy that team has been and how bad they've been, man. I don't understand.
Unreal, man. We need a BLTV soon so we can really kind of talk about that. I know this is a Bills centric podcast, but man, oh man, what a dumpster fire Denver's been all year.
So they play Denver and then they play Oakland in the final regular season. I'm trying to see here. Why is reading comprehension so hard? Yes, they play in Vegas to close out the season. So again, looking at the playoff picture now, John, if the season were to end today, I know you've been waiting for it these last 3 weeks. You've been itching. I can tell from a distance. If the season ended today, which we know it doesn't, the Buffalo Bills get the 1 seed. It would be the 7 seed Dolphins at the 2 seed Chiefs, the 6 seed Chargers at the 3 seed Bengals, and the 5 seed Ravens at the 4 seed Jacksonville Jaguars, which they have been a revelation this year.
Something about that doesn't seem right.
No.
Kind of need Miami to lose this week. I never thought I'd be rooting for the Patriots, but I'm going to root for the Patriots.
I mean,
because I know Buffalo's going to bring it to them in week 18 because with first place on the line, they're going to be playing their starters. They got something to play for.
So here's the thing, though. This is the big difference, John. Presuming 2, 3, and 4 win, right? The best teams are going to win out. Buffalo would then play Jacksonville at home, and then you have Kansas City hosting the Bengals. So right there, the 2 biggest teams, you go from needing to beat Kansas City and Cincinnati to needing to beat Kansas City or Cincinnati.
Right.
If you're getting to that point, because again, I'm not presuming victories or anything, but that is the case. You have to beat a Jacksonville or a Baltimore to get.
Jacksonville's no slouch in this stretch either.
But come to Buffalo in January and tell me how you're doing. Anybody come to Buffalo in January and tell me how you're doing. Tell me how you're feeling. So
come
this
to Buffalo right now and tell me how you're feeling. I've been following Steph Diggs on Twitter for the last few days since he came home, and he's just like, it won't stop snowing. This is crazy.
I should have led the podcast off with it. It crossed my mind, but obviously our thoughts at Gear Network and Better Alive Than Dead Trust the Podcast. We're thinking about you, Buffalo. I wish we could be closer to help out, but it's kind of a hopeless feeling seeing all your friends and a lot of other people struggle and just be stuck. It's
absolutely
terrible.
I've been talking to keeping tabs on a lot of my friends that are out there in Buffalo, and a couple of them had been stranded, and so kind of seeing their stories and what they go through, and then you think about hearing about how many people froze to death out there, literally that literally happened. And how lucky that some of my friends, I feel very lucky that some of my friends were in the positions that they were in, because while it sucked for some of them to spend Christmas outside of their normal house, they were at least safe, Yeah.
And that's the most important thing,
and the city of Buffalo, for as much as my late great friend Brody Lee would trash it, they do really have some good Samaritans there, some good people there. And so shout out to all of you that, have gone out of your way out in Buffalo to help people out there in times of need. You're all one Buffalo, it's not a cliche thing it's not a cliche thing to say. It's,
John, we always talk about Buffalo being the city of good neighbors. And every time something happens, they step up and they step out. They show up. There are people who were taking in strangers and helping keep them alive. There were stories. There were so many stories of good Samaritans doing so many just absolutely mind-blowing things to help out people they never even met before in their life.
Right.
Simply because That's just how Buffalo is.
And it's just so crazy to me how close to us that was, and we got a dusting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really puts things in perspective.
This is the scary thing we could talk about in the BLTD podcast, but I don't think, just from like my one, I'm a meteorologist, junior meteorologist, because I took one class in college. But with like global warming and the lake not freezing over yet, these things are going to happen more and more and more, unfortunately, and we have to adjust, because at this point, you can't say it's not going to happen again, because it's the third time it's happened this year. I saw a tweet earlier today that said something along the lines of Buffalo is almost at 100 inches of snow for the season, or for this time of year. Last year, they were at 9 inches of snow. So it's been very, very, very big, drastic difference from this time last year. And again,
absolutely,
it's just devastating to see this. And it really is. It's just unbelievable, the year that Buffalo has had.
Indeed. And not speaking of sports, obviously that's one thing. That's a great highlight for the team, but for the city, but just the city has been through so much in this past year, not just this season, but this past year. Like it just feels like Buffalo as a city can't catch a break. But even in spite of all of that, they're still showing people how it's done, and showing that there is decent humanity left in the world, and really kind of setting the stage for the example for really how everybody should be and how everybody should act in times like this. So, shout out to all of Buffalo there, and our well wishes continue to be sent your direction. Absolutely. As you guys recover from this.
So I want to ask you before we finish up the podcast here, who you got on Monday Night Football?
Man, I've got Troy Aikman being probably hammered and saying something, rattling off something stupid. That's much is for sure. Wow, this one's going to be a tough one.
Well, I did steal your gimmick. This is a gimmick infringement, but I did steal your gimmick.
I did see that, and I appreciate that.
Because, John, you have not been here for 3 weeks. I had to keep it going because it's a very good gimmick to have. Yes, ESPN Analytics matchup predictor, 54.6% of America picks Buffalo, 44.8% of America picks Cincinnati, and 0.6% of America picks absolute chaos with a tie.
Yes. I really, really, really don't know. I want to say Buffalo, but if Buffalo plays like they did against Chicago, against Cincinnati, I think I'm going to be more in alignment with that 44.7% with Cincinnati. Just this is a tough one. This is a real tough one. They're playing in Cincinnati. Man, I don't know.
Look at it's why you think about
I don't know.
It's going to be a great measuring stick for the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to just go off on a homer note here and say I've got the Bills winning and continuing their winning ways because they have to. If they want that easy road to the Super Bowl, where the Super Bowl the road to, what is it, Arizona this year? Yeah, comes through Buffalo in January, mid to late January. That is as much home field advantage as you can ask for.
Absolutely.
With the loud ass fans at Highmark Stadium, with the snow, with the cold, you're looking at having, potentially Baltimore or Jacksonville or the Chargers or the Dolphins coming to Buffalo for that first divisional game. If you have the 1 seed, goodness, absolutely, man, it's going to be miserable for whoever comes here. But that's why you have to win. Sorry, John. That's why you have to win this game. It is
absolutely.
I can't remember the last time, John, I said that a 12-3 team has a must-win game. But looking at how the season has played out, if you lose the game, it's not a huge deal because you're still in a very good position. But if you win and this is going to sound so stupid because I just obviously said, if you lose it, not a big deal. You're still in a good spot. But if you win it, it is a huge victory, possibly one of the biggest of the season. I'd obviously put it right up there with the Kansas City game, just simply because If Buffalo beat, that's the hard part about this season too. I kind of going off on a tangent quick. They should have beat Miami. They should have beat the Jets. They should have beat the Vikings. You lose games like that all season, but to see the fact that the Buffalo Bills, I don't want to say that they could be undefeated, but all of those games were winnable. All of the games they've won and played this year have been winnable. And
well, I mean, by that, going by that theory, the Jets should be an 11 or 12 win team now.
Yes,
I mean?
but when
any given Sunday, man.
Exactly. I agree with that. But when you look at the game and you go, okay, you could have won that game. You had red zone problems. Everything else was great. Or that game, Josh Allen had his arm almost ripped off, whatever. Or the Vikings game that you should not have collapsed, but you did. Again, it's just those little things where you look back and say, okay, if this, then that type of thing. But that's why this game is so much more important, because if you win it, you're almost guaranteed to lock up that 1 seed. And again, that would be, I just can't fathom the Buffalo Bills being the 1 seed in the AFC, being the favorites to win the Super Bowl. All that's like, I just can't fathom it, because I've gotten so sick of Kansas City always winning everything, always being the best team. It's someone else's turn. The Bengals last year, it was great to see them. Let's go Buffalo. Come on. Let's get Buffalo in a good spot, win the game, control your destiny. I do the damn thing.
I think if this were any team other than the Bengals right now, I would be on board with that. But I think Cincinnati plays a game of shut up football. Like, no one predicted them going to the Super Bowl like they did last year, and they were arguably within a couple of plays of winning that against Los Angeles.
But the Rams did sell their soul to the devil to win that Super Bowl.
Right. And then you look at them this year, like, nobody thought that they were really going to be doing, would it be a Super Bowl hangover? Would it be anything like that? I mean, they were 2-3 at one point during the season before they finally kicked it into overdrive and just started beating everybody and playing really hard and playing really well and continuing that trend. I mean, they started the season 0-2, and the stats that ESPN always shows. No team, only like 3 teams since 1994 that have started 0-2 made the playoffs. Well, guess what's happening now is like this was a team that people were writing off in week 2 as being a fluke and being.
Well, here's the thing too.
What we thought they were.
If you let me kind of be a homer again. They've beaten Carolina, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Kansas City, which that's a very big, that's one of those upper echelon victories, obviously. Cleveland, Tampa, and New England. So again, quality of opponent, questionable, right? But
I mean, I don't know. You got Tennessee, Kansas City in there.
Hear me out. With that being said, John, what's the one thing we always talk about? Good teams beat bad teams. That's how it works out. So, like, these are games you would expect Cincinnati to win, because obviously with the way that schedules play out, sometimes a team may have an easier schedule than another team. I mean, the Bengals played the Jets, the Dolphins, the Saints, the Falcons. Those were all wins. They beat the Panthers. They've only lost to Cleveland, Baltimore, Dallas, and Pittsburgh. Dallas and Pittsburgh being those 2 first games of the season. So really, let's be real. Since those first 2 games of the season, they've gone on an 11-2 run.
Right.
That's really impressive. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just trying to make sense of this, because it's like, are they going to continue to steamroll, or is it just have they gotten hot at the right time, or did they get hot too early? We don't know. We won't know till the season's over. I'm just rambling here. I apologize, but I'm trying to make sense of it.
I get it. Honestly, I could see. I think I'm in that one of those percentage points in the tie, man. I'm that 0.6 because I have a hard time picking a winner. I feel like my gut is telling me Buffalo, but my mind is telling me Cincinnati.
Look, if it ends up being a tie, I'm buying that 0.6% of America a beer.
Perfect. I will happily take that.
Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, if it is a tie, Buffalo would be guaranteed to clinch that. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, I have no earthly idea how that works, but
I'll give it a run really quick. I'll go on the ESPN playoff machine here real fast, and we'll see.
They have that. Yeah, I don't know, man. This is one of those tough. Either way, it's going to be a hell of a game to watch. There's going to be a lot of people probably calling out sick the next day, and places of employment around Buffalo and Cincinnati. So be prepared for that, corporate America, if you're listening.
Week 17, Bills and Bengals. Oh no, because the Chiefs would have 14 wins, it would be Buffalo second at 13-3-1, which I thought they would have a better win percentage, but I guess more wins. That's probably something stupid to say. I don't know. I get all confused with the percentages and stuff like that. But anyways, John.
Yes.
We've gone off the deep end because we're drinking a Kool-Aid. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you back on the podcast.
Yes. Great to be back. I
really appreciate you taking the time on this Tuesday night. We won't know updates on the Bills until Thursday. They're practicing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday because of the Monday Night Football. Kind of gives everybody a couple extra days to rest up and be ready for this big matchup on Monday night. Bills at the Bengals. Like we always say here, John, we are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
We will catch you sometime very soon, next week. That's soon enough. As always, thank you for tuning in, and go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.